The Flash, issue 6, legacy number 806, Cy Spurrier writing with Mike Deodato Jr. on the art. So, Jesus, you know what? I enjoyed a good chunk of this issue, but at the same time, sometimes there'll just be like moments where like they'll be talking to the stillness, and the stillness will use like 4 or 5 new terms that I do not recognize, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Arc angles? What's an arc angle?
Well, so that was the thing that was brought up the last time he talked to them.
I'll take your word
They were
for
like,
it.
they were like these, they were like these guardian spirits, or so we thought. When they brought them up. But I remember those because I remember commenting to you that they sound like archangels, right?
Yes.
So I remember talking about that.
Okay. Well, do you remember D-Brain? Because they say D-Brain in almost the same speech bubble. What's a D-Brain?
The D-Brain was like the membrane that gets them through all of this timey-wimey type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm shocked you're remembering any of this.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I remember that stuff, but I wish the context where they pop up was better, because I hate the stillness. I do not enjoy when they come up, and it's almost like these were words that I was forced to learn, like in science class. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like that I remember them. They do nothing to enhance the story. They're just there.
That's the thing. I think the overall story though is pretty good, because effectively what's happening here is that Wally's taking Linda on a job with him for some bonding time, and the narration, which is third person, but kind of like gives it from Linda's perspective, kinda, even though it's not her speaking, talks about her feelings and how that she's kind of detached right now, and that she, can see all the effort, and she sees why she fell in love with Wally, but she's not feeling anything right now. And there's a great little like sort of 1-2 thing in this where there's a moment where Wally's clearly like upset or something's hurting him, and she describes, or the narration describes, that that Linda can see that he's hurt, but somehow can't just bring herself to comfort him. But then there's a moment later when he's upset again, where her hand instinctively goes onto his shoulder, and it's almost like this little hint that no, like deep down, like everything's okay. Their feelings are still there. Obviously, something else is going on here. And by the end of the issue, it does seem like this force from the other dimension or outside of our dimensions is trying to turn Wally into a conduit. So the way that him and Barry are acting, and like their discontent in this issue, and and just the general idea that Wally has been like disconnected from his family and retreating to this kind of like secret, garden, like in another dimension that he's been going to like hang out. It feels like it's, again, it's doing that thing where it takes something that happens in real life and is making it more literal. This idea that, sometimes people can shut off and start becoming disconnected, and they'll avoid going home and stuff like that. They'll sort of have a secret place, even if they're not doing anything inherently wrong. They're not necessarily having an affair or anything like that, but they're just sort of like trying to avoid being with the rest of the family. It feels like that's kind of what they're doing here with Wally in this place. But it's also got this added influence of like these villains trying to turn him into a conduit because he's special, because he can channel the Speed Force in a way that no one else can, or whatever. That broad story, I'm kind of into, and I was enjoying the narration here, talking about how Linda was feeling about everything throughout the issue, and this weird thing where she kept wearing this mask because they go to London at the start of the issue, and she picks up this like guy's face that's just like a mask, and she's like, I
believe it's supposed to be Winston Churchill.
Yeah, that actually sounds right. He's got kind of a chubby face,
which makes it even funnier.
But she's kind of wearing that for the rest of the issue, off and on, as she's like not wanting people to see who she is. And I thought that was a kind of an interesting little quirky thing. But I do agree, whenever the stillness show up and start talking, I just kind of like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah. So I still appreciate what's going on here with Wally. Like you brought up, like this whole idea is that they're isolating him so then they can use him themselves. It's just so many of these things, and I know we're getting towards the end of the first arc, and so all of these things that we've been introduced to are starting to come up, and I was starting getting as worn down as Wally was, So if that was the intent, like great, but man, this felt like a lot.
Yeah, and it's funny because they brought up one of the things that happens about halfway through the issue is that Jay shows up, young Jay, and is like, hey, something's happened at school. So they all go to his school, and everyone's frozen still, including his sister. And it's like, this is like, these anomalies keep happening more and more often because of what's happening with the stillness and the fabric of reality starting to break down because the Speed Force is, well, at least they say it's because of Wally. Obviously, I suspect they might be telling fibs.
Yep.
But they see this stuff, and I thought, okay, they remind me here because Wally brings up that him and Jay had a talk where Jay didn't want to become a superhero. And I like that it came up that way because Linda's like, wait, what talk? What's happening?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on with my son that you didn't tell me? I like that. It felt like a nice natural thing to have a little bit of contention over. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm also glad you reminded me of that issue because I thought that issue was really good last time. I thought that was such a focused issue. Probably because it kept away from the stillness stuff long enough. So I'm actually kind of excited to... Like, I can see the stillness still being here after the first arc. I don't know if they're going to just go away, but I'm kind of excited to get past this first phase and sort of let the run focus in a little bit more and like where it's going next. But like I say, the character stuff is really working for me. That moment where Linda puts her hand on his shoulder and it basically just describes that this was instinct, just to sort of show that though that instinct in there to comfort him's still there, and like who these characters are deep down is still going to sort of ultimately win the day, but we're going through a lot of turmoil to get there. It's like they're all being affected by like not red kryptonite, but like some kind of kryptonite.
There's a disturbance in the Speed Force, right?
There you go. That's a good way of putting it.
And Wally can sense it, and I feel like Linda's gone through this enough that it's almost like she can read him, right? So that's where the touch out of instinct comes from. And she gets pulled along. I like that page too, where the art gets all psychedelic when he jumps sideways, and because she has her hand on his shoulder, it gets all this like psychedelic, and she can kind of see the garden too, right? So that's like the closest that she can get to understanding him. Yeah,
there's basically a glimpse of it, and he just kind of brushes it off because he doesn't want to explain it, which was what really made me think of that idea of, oh, that's my secret man cave I can't tell her about. And she's recognizing that he's hiding something, that he's keeping secrets. Like that stuff I'm really liking because I feel like it's feeling very true to me. It's feeling like not so much that this conflict's coming from, like, it's clearly influenced by this outside force, but it feels like real character conflicts in real life being put into the characters, and I think that's good.
It's still a human feeling that Wally needs a place to go to kind of decompress. And I'm sure Linda would understand that if he just explains it to him, but he's being pulled in 4 different directions, and now the fact that he's keeping it a secret, it's almost to her like, wait, what is going on?
Well, it's not just that, though. Like I say, I think she's also been affected by this outside force, or at the very least, that's also, much like I said, it's heightening what he's going through. We kind of talked about how she may have some postnatal depression in previous issues. It feels like she's been kind of down since the baby came. And I think maybe, again, that's been taken and heightened by you know, whatever else is going on. But yeah, like Barry at one point starts talking with someone else's voice. Like the bubbles change to blue, and clearly someone else is talking to Wally through him. And then we get like where it gets really trippy, where it's like there's these two other voices talking that the stillness are reporting to. It's like two voices. I mean, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to say gods here, but I don't think they actually are gods. But I'm just going to say it's like two gods are talking, and the stillness are reporting everything that was went on. And a nice touch here in the art is that the glass is shattered as a almost like reality shattering, and we're seeing who's behind the the interrogation room mirror almost. And then the end of the issue basically refers to what's coming as the Crown of Thorns, and we see what looks like maybe a reverse Flash surrounded by other Flash villains. So yeah, I mean, the fact that a Thon might be behind all this, like, sure, okay, maybe you like that, maybe you could complain that, oh, it's just Thon again, somehow, but, I mean, I don't know.
It's Thon, but made up of a bunch of smaller Thons.
He's going really trippy with his next plan to try and take over.
I'm wondering, too, because we've never gotten any closure on him when Dr. Manhattan, blew him up. Right? From the button all those years ago.
Oh yeah, is it possible he's like finding his way back through reality through all this Speed Force fabricy time shit? I mean, I don't even know what to call it.
Because they call Wally the Cynosure, which sounds like like a closure, like a suture.
Again, another just really weird word that they're using in this like it's a normal word.
Right. And so they're talking about how he is the strongest link there is, right? And which makes sense because Barry's the first Flash that touched the Speed Force, right? But Wally's been the one that was learning to do different things with his abilities, right? Through the Wade run, through the Johns run, through all this other stuff. And so, and him also kind of being the crux of the Flash family, a lot like the way that Nightwing's kind of the crux for the DCU as a whole. And so the fact that it's almost like the Speed Force, while it doesn't flow through him, he has more connections to it. And so if someone's going to tamper with the Speed Force, it's going to be through Wally. Yeah, and then you give us...
I kind of like the idea, actually, that... because Thawne's tied to Barry, like that's his nemesis. I do kind of like this idea that he has this realization that Wally's actually the one that's more connected to the Speed Force. So whatever he's going to do, he has to go through him instead. But it also makes sense that he would enjoy like making them hate each other. That he would enjoy, taking control of Barry and like talking through him or whatever.
That's where I was getting is like it's gonna hurt more, through Wally than it is to Barry because he sees Wally as the biggest, like they called him the Sinister or whatever, but he has the strongest connection. So everyone's going to feel the hurt more if it comes through him versus Barry. And that's all he ever wants to do, right, is destroy the Flash family. Yeah,
and it's almost like he's breaking him down to his lowest point by trying to sever all of his like human connections to make him vulnerable to whatever he's doing. So all that's interesting, and I'm enjoying this like consistent art style that we've had. Obviously, I like the art in general, but these layouts where there's these extra bits of panels that are around the border all the time. My favorite part in this issue is actually when Linda puts his hand on his shoulder. It comes in from one of those sort of extra panels at the side, so it's coming from off the page. So it feels like the art's representing it was a surprise that the hand touched his shoulder, like he's surprised. And the art kind of represents that. It's a really nice use of that. It's almost like they decided on this sort of style for this book, and they've been able to find ways of using it to represent different things. For example, in the very next page, when the stillness show up, they sort of like dip out into that extra panel as well, again implying that they're coming from outside of the regular world. There's all these little things they do with like the placement of coming outside of these other panels. They make it feel like they're being not in the same way every time. It's always different how they're using them, but it feels like they're really utilizing them, and it's kind of interesting because it's not the first comic to use this style or this technique, but it's made it such a consistent part of its DNA. It's been here since the very first part of the run, and I think that maybe that was like a conscious choice because so much of this story is going to be the idea of reality bleeding in from somewhere else and like things becoming less defined. So all these like extra panels around the border are kind of really good at representing that on like a constant visual way. So yeah, that's good.
Well, and then looking through that too, and when Wally gets stabbed and he falls through the glass, right? And then it starts to form the crown of thorns. All of those like tentacles in they got like eyeballs and stuff on them are bleeding into those panels too. So it almost makes it like it's infecting reality as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, or even just the page where like some of the boxes aren't there and the narration just like is written on the white. And again, it gives it this feeling of the voice becoming omnipotent because it's in the void rather than on the panels. Like there's a lot of just good little like storytelling craft bits like that, which are really nice. So no, it's good. Also, since we built up to a reveal that Thawne has something to do with this, the fact that all that stuff with Barry and Wally up until Barry, who's possessed, effectively stabs him, all of that's taking place in yellow. Like it's all just yellow around them.
Yeah. So. Well, and even like when those goggle things of the thing that Barry had gotten preoccupied with, when they go over his eyes, it makes him look like Zoom. Right?
It does. Yeah, it does.
And I was just like, so looking back at this, I was like, man, great storytelling where they're giving us the hints right before they make the full reveal. Yeah. So
Yeah, so there's definitely stuff in it, and like sort of some clunkiness to the mythology, and like all these extra made up words that are being thrown in. But like the core drama of it, and like the craft of the actual page to page comic book storytelling is really strong. So I'm still really liking the book. But there's definitely always just a little bit of there's always just a little bit of extra there that if they just trimmed that extra away, it would probably
a little bit
feel even better.
And it makes me wonder too that if that's why Thawne got rid of Max, because Max Mercury has this, he treats the Speed Force like it's this like source of religion, right? It's it's all about meditation and being Zen and all of that. And I'm wondering if that's why he got rid of Max, and that Max is going to be the key to Wally calming himself down enough to defeat this Crown of Thawnes or whatever. What if it's Thawne or multiple Thawnes, whatever. And it's
obviously,
I
don't feel we have to point this out, but obviously, Crown of Thawnes is a play on Crown of Thorns.
Right? But I'm wondering if that's what it is, and that's what the whole idea of the Zen Garden is like this is his happy spot. This is the place where he can slow down enough, and it's kind of in that Max Mercury way of treating the Speed Force as this Zen thing.
If we're going with Crown of Thorns like comparison, that sort of turns it to religion. Does it make sense that he's trying to manipulate Wally by giving him his own Garden of Eden? Like, if we going further down the religious allegories?
Could be too. You know,
him seeing himself as a god, effectively.
But yeah, and I was also trying to figure out who the other villains are, because I'm pretty sure it's Mirror Master and Grodd.
Yeah,
but the other two, I mean, maybe Weather Wizard, and I don't know who the other one is. And those are mostly villains that you kind of associate with Barry, not Wally, because Wally has his own rogues.
Yeah, and notably when reality shatters, it shatters like glass, which does tie into Mirror Master as well.
Mirror Master. So, so if this ends up being these are Barry's villains coming after Wally, I also like that in the term of legacy as well. That they're trying to use these different guys to get one over on the Flash for whatever reason. It just feels very much, despite, like you said, despite all the little extra things, it feels very much like a Flash story. It has that tone to it when you dig deeper.
Yeah. All right, what are you giving the Flash, issue 6?
I'm going to use an 8.5.
I'm just going to go with a straight 8. Like I say, there's just a couple of little nitpicks and like clunkiness at times that just I think stops it from being truly great, but there's a lot of good stuff in here to really like.